Alright, welcome back to the next video in this course. And so now in this video here, I'll be showing you how to set up and structure your trade tracking spreadsheet. And so before doing that though, I just want to quickly go over the basic kinds of metrics you should be tracking for your trades. And the list I'll be showing you here is not all inclusive. It is just a collection of some fundamental basic metrics that I believe you should be tracking for all of your trades regardless of the product that you are trading. Right, so these metrics you'll see here are applicable to options trading, stock trading, futures, foreign exchange, anything. So first up we have your position type. So for example, in the last video, when I gave you an overview of my spreadsheet, I showed you briefly the various position types that I have as an options trader, like naked puts, strangles, credit spreads, etc. And if you trade stock, for example, it could be as simple as just having your long positions and having your short positions. Or for example, maybe if you trade stock based on certain patterns you see in charts, you could break up your positions based on the pattern that you use to enter the trade, like the head and shoulders pattern, for example. That could be one position type or one position group, etc. Next up, we have your ticker symbol, and this is pretty self-explanatory. What is the ticker symbol for the product that you are trading? If you made a trade on Apple, then it's going to be AAPL. And then if you made a trade on Twitter, that's going to be TWTR, so on and so forth. Next, we have the number of contracts or shares that you either bought or sold for a given position. So in the case of options trading or futures trading, you would use number of contracts, and then in the case of stock, you would obviously use number of shares. Then we have the date you entered the trade. Again, this is also pretty self-explanatory, and I would say it's probably not necessary to track the exact time down to the minute or second you entered the trade unless you are doing very, very short-term trades. As for me, for example, I just track the day that I entered the trade, the month, day, and year, basically. And so then naturally what follows this is the date that you exited the trade. Moving on, what was the entry price of the trade? So for example, if I sold a naked put option on Apple stock, and maybe I sold that put for $250, that would be my entry price, $250. And then if you're trading stock, what was the share price of the stock when you made the trade? If you bought 100 shares of Apple stock at $126.15, then the entry price would be $126.15. And so then similar with the date exited, what was your exit price? If I initially sold a put option for $250 and then I bought it back for only $100, then my exit price would be $100. Moving forward, were there any commissions you had to pay throughout the duration of the trade? Now fortunately, in today's day and age, commissions are very low for retail traders. And in fact, if you are a stock trader, chances are you have no commissions anymore. So this may not be a relevant metric for stock traders to track if you simply don't have any commissions. But in the case of options trading, I definitely do have some commissions, although they are very small. Right now my broker, TD Ameritrade, charges 65 cents per contract for either buying or selling an option. So I do have commissions when I open a trade, when I adjust a trade, and when I close a trade. So I definitely do keep track of how much money I'm paying to my broker simply for making trades. Next up we have the capital requirement for your trade. How much money or capital did your broker require you to put up to enter the position? So for example, if you bought 100 shares of stock at $50 per share and you are not trading on margin, then the capital requirement for that position would be $5,000 because you as the trader would have to put up that total amount of money to buy those 100 shares. Or if you are trading on margin, and therefore you only have to put up a fraction of that total capital, maybe 50%, then your capital requirement would be $2,500. So whatever initial amount of capital your broker is requiring from you, that is your capital requirement on the trade. Moving on, what is your profit target? For me personally, I typically take my profits at 50% of the maximum possible. So again, if I sell a put option on some stock for $200, 50% of that is $100. So once the price of that put option drops down from $200 down to $100, I will then buy the contract back and walk away with a $100 profit. And then in the case of stock trading or futures trading, you might specify your profit target based on the capital requirement. So for example, if your capital requirement was $10,000, maybe on this one trade, your profit target is 5%. So 5% of $10,000 is $500. That's how much money you're trying to make on this one trade. And then we also have your stop loss point, assuming you actually use one. And so very similar to your profit target, you can also track this as a percentage of the total capital required for your trade. If your profit target is 5%, of that total capital, then maybe your stop loss is also 5%. So if you make 500 bucks on a trade, you then get out for a profit, and then if you lose 500 bucks on that trade, you then cut your losses and get out. So just some basic examples there, but you can definitely structure your profit target and your stop loss point in some other way that makes sense for you. Next up, we obviously have what was your total profit or loss on the trade. So that's obviously pretty self-explanatory, so moving on here. Also, what was your return on capital? If you made 500 bucks on $10,000 in capital, that's a 5% return on that capital. So this is a way to analyze how efficiently you are using your capital. And then finally here, what was your trade duration? How long were you in the trade for? And this can vary quite greatly depending on your trading strategy. Me, for example, my trades typically last between 2 or 3 weeks. But obviously, if you are doing very short-term day trading, your trades could last as short as just a few minutes. And so like I said, this is definitely not an all-inclusive, 100% comprehensive list. You definitely should add more metrics to this list, depending on your strategy and the product you are trading. But hopefully this list here will get you started. And so now let's back out of the PowerPoint here and come over to the right. And so now let's start building this spreadsheet. And for your spreadsheet, you can use pretty much any spreadsheeting program out there. In this case here, I'm using Numbers, which is Apple software, but you can definitely use Excel from Microsoft or Google Sheets. I would say as long as your program has some built-in math functions that I'll show you how to use here in a minute, then you should be totally fine. So at the top here, this is where you're going to put all the headers, the names basically, for the various metrics you're going to track for all of your trades. So for example, the first one here could be your position type or your position group. And then down in this column, this is where you would list your various position types that you use in your strategy. And then next you would have your ticker symbol. And then next you would have your number of, in my case, contracts as an options trader, and so on and so forth. So what I'm going to do here is pause the video and get all the headers laid out first, and then I'll continue forward once I have that done. Okay, so there we go. I just took all the metrics from that PowerPoint slide and added each one as a header in the spreadsheet here, going all the way down. And then obviously I added some formatting to make it look a bit nicer as well. And so now coming back to the position type, this one is very important because it's how you're going to break up and group your trades in this spreadsheet here. So let me show you how this is going to work here. So as you saw in the previous video, some of the position types that I use as an options trader would be the naked put strategy. Another strategy I like to use is the strangle. So I'll put that right there. And I'll do one more. I'll put the iron condor here as well. And let me also add some formatting here. There we go. And so now for any trade that I put on that is a naked put strategy, I will log the metrics for each trade under this naked put subheader. So as an example, let's say I sold a naked put on Apple. So I would put the ticker symbol for Apple in the box right here under ticker symbol. And then maybe I sold 2 contracts, 2 Apple put options, and perhaps I sold these options on April 5th, 2021. And then of course I would fill out some of these other metrics as well. And then after that, maybe I sold some put options on Twitter. So the way I would log that is I would just go to the next row under Apple, and I would log the ticker symbol for Twitter, which is TWTR. And then let's say I sold 1 put option contract on that stock, and perhaps I did it on the same day that I sold my Apple put options. And so now, as you can see, I'm temporarily out of room for logging more naked put trades here. So let's say as a third trade, I also sold some put options on Snapchat. So what I would do in this case is just add a new row below my Twitter trade, like that. And then under ticker symbol, I would just write in SNAP. That's the symbol for Snapchat. Maybe I sold 3 contracts, and perhaps I did this the day after I sold my Apple and Twitter put options. So April 6th, 2021. And then of course, so on and so forth. I would obviously have to add in my entry price, my commissions, capital requirement, so on and so forth. But I just wanted to show you these 3 quick examples here so you can at least see how you actually go about logging new trades into the spreadsheet and adding new rows. And so now going forward, obviously I can't add anything into my date exited column yet until I actually exit the trade, so I'll leave that blank for now. As for my entry price, maybe I sold my Apple put options for 200 bucks. And also in a minute here, I'll show you how to format the values in each column so that in the case of your entry price, for example, when you type in 200, it automatically shows up as $200. And so moving on here, can't do my exit price yet. For my commissions though, maybe I paid $1.30 in commissions. As for my capital requirement, for selling 2 naked put options on Apple, perhaps my broker, TD Ameritrade, required me to put up $3,000 in total capital for that. Profit target is 50%. Stop loss for me might be 200%, which in the case of options trading, what this means is I will cut my losses if those losses do exceed 200% of my initial credit. So in this example here, if I sell my put options on Apple for $200, that's my initial credit, then 200% of this would be $600. So that means if my Apple trade here starts to really move against me and the price of this put option goes from 200 up to 600, I will then buy the contracts back and get out for a loss. So in this case, if I sell a put option for $200 and then I buy it back for $600, that's a loss of $400 per contract. So for me at least, with my options trading, that's how I specify my stop loss point. And so then moving on, I can't do my profit or loss yet because I just put on the trade. Same thing with my return on capital and trade duration. So these are the metrics right here that I would log in once I make the trade. And I would do the same thing for Twitter and Snapchat here as well. And then once I'm out of these trades, I will then go back into my spreadsheet here and fill in the remaining metrics. And so before I do that though, let's go ahead and first format each of these columns here. Now for some of the popular spreadsheeting platforms out there like Numbers, Excel, Google Sheets, etc., the program is smart enough to sometimes recognize the format of the value you type into your cell here. So for example, with this date entered column, Numbers automatically recognized that these values here were dates. And obviously same thing with the number of contracts here. They're just simple integers. But for the case of my entry price, Numbers does not know that I want this to be represented as a currency, as $200. So what I can do is just click on the entire column itself. This is column F. And then I'll go to Format here, and under Cell Data Format, I can just click in here and go to Currency. And so there you go. Now anytime I type a number into this column here, it will be shown as a dollar amount. So for the case of my Twitter put options that I sold in my examples here, maybe I sold that option for $100. So type in 100, press enter, now it shows up as $100. And same thing for my exit price, my commissions, capital requirement. All three of these things should be shown as dollar amounts. So again, go to Data Format and go to Currency. And there you go, $1.30 in commissions, $3,000 as my capital requirement. Moving over, my profit target and my stop loss point are both percentages. So again, let's come back over to Data Format and we'll go to percentage this time. And oops, looks like I took the values I put in here as whole integers. So let me just replace this with 50% and 200%. There you go. And then my profit or loss column will also be shown as a dollar amount. So I'll format this as currency. And then my return on capital is also going to be a percentage. And trade duration, I typically track this as just the number of days I was in the trade. And these will just be simple integer values. So nothing to do here. And so there you go. Now all of the columns here are formatted. So it's a lot easier to read. And then finally here in this video as a last example, let's say my Apple trade was a success. And let's say I got out of the trade on April 15th, 2021. And my exit price was $100. Moving on. Now for these two, my profit or loss and my return on capital, you can definitely calculate these values by hand. So in the case of my profit or loss, if I sold 2 put option contracts for $200 a piece, and then I bought them back for only $100, that's a profit of $100 per contract times 2 contracts. That's a total profit of $200. And then from that $200, I subtract the commissions I paid on the trade. And so actually I do need to update this commissions column as well. If it costed me $1.30 to put on the trade, then it's also going to cost me $1.30 to get out of the trade. So now my total commissions is going to be $2.60. So like I was saying, the total profit or loss at the end of the day is $200 minus $2.60 in commissions, which is $197.40. So like I said, you can do that calculation yourself. It's not that hard. But you can also leverage the built-in functions that Numbers or Excel or Google Sheets will provide you to do a lot of this arithmetic for you. So for example, if I click into my profit or loss box here, I can just type in the equal sign, and now I can fill in a function that will do the math for me. So in this case, I can just take my entry price and then subtract from that my exit price. And then if I click in here and I put both of these things in parentheses like that, and I multiply this by the number of contracts I sold, and then finally subtract my commissions on the trade and press enter, there you go, $197.40. And now the cool thing is I can apply that little formula down my entire column here. So for example, with my Twitter trade, let's say I also got out of this trade for a profit. So let's say my exit date was April 20th, 2021. Exit price was 50 bucks. Total commissions was $1.30 because this was only one contract, not two contracts. And let's say my capital requirement was $2,000. Profit target also 50, stop loss 200. And now for my profit and loss on this trade, I can just hover my cursor right there and you'll see a very tiny yellow dot. I can click and hold on that and drag it down and boom, there you go. So what this did is it applied the same formula that I used for my Apple trade on my Twitter trade and did all the math to figure out my exact profit or loss on that trade, $48.70. And so then for my return on capital, this is just going to be my profit or loss divided by my capital requirement. So again, I can create a function that will do the math for me. So I type in the equal sign, and then I just click on my profit or loss to highlight that box there. And then I just want the value in that box divided by my capital requirement. Press enter. There you go. That's a 6.58% return on my capital for this trade. And then again, I can just click on this box here and just drag it down and boom. That applies the same math to my Twitter trade. And for this one, this is a 2.4% return on my capital. And then finally for my trade duration, again, I can use a formula for this. And so this is just going to be my date exited minus my date entered. Press enter, and there you go, 10 days. And once again, just drag it down. So likewise for my Twitter trade, that was 15 total days. And so there you go. That's how you can set up and structure your trade tracking spreadsheet and also take advantage of some built-in math functions to do a lot of the arithmetic for you automatically. And so now in the next video coming up, I'll be showing you, coming back to my personal spreadsheet here, in the next video I'll be showing you how to create this table down here that shows you a lot of your portfolio statistics. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.